the problem is some people thought, well, if Joseph Smith made mistakes, that must mean he's a fallen prophet, and therefore he's got to be removed. And God's like, hey, I understand that I gave a fallen human keys and responsibility, and guess what? I expect that there will be times when things get messed up, and that's what the whole plan of salvation is about, is forgiveness. And again, for some context, listen to the people who are causing problems in the church, the apostasy. Norman Brown leaves the church after his horse had died on the way down to Missouri, to Zion and back. He's like, I'm just done. My horse is gone. I'm just done with the kingdom of God. Joseph Wakefield, he leaves the church after he sees Joseph Smith playing with some kids. And his feeling is like, a man of God, a prophet of God, who that's just not prophetic activity.
I tell you what, seeing Joseph come down from upstairs doing revelatory work and then come down and romp around the front room with the children causes him to say he can't be a prophet. And for me, that would just touch my heart. Because what would Jesus probably say? Suffer the little children to come unto me.
You nailed it. We got Simon's Rider, some sections ago. He leaves a church because his name gets misspelled. In fact, when I was making notes today, I misspelled his name and I forgot there's a D right there. Ezra Booth, again, is one of the most vociferous and vocal opponents. And then you have all the problems that had happened at the Morley farm, where they're trying to live the communal order, and also with Lehman Copley, who had reneged on his willingness to offer his farm for people to live together. There's just a lot going on. And here we are, we're less than a year and a half into the church. And there's just all this contention and misunderstanding. And I love what God is doing here. He's saying, hey, look, I'm in charge. I understand that my children will sometimes make mistakes. Sometimes we'll see that they'll trespass against one another. And this never, ever goes away. It's always, always available. We sometimes think it isn't, and we turn our back and act like, oh, I can't be forgiven because we have failed to turn to the source of forgiveness. So this is actually one of my favorite sections. I probably say that a lot about a lot of the Doctrine and Covenants.
It's the way the scriptures
are. The theme
are.
is so insistent that we can be forgiven and that we should forgive one another.
Isn't it interesting as you go through that list, Taylor, to consider our own lives today as we live in the 21st century? How often do you sometimes pay too much attention to these negative horizontal voices that tell you, you messed up, you're not good enough, you'll never be good enough, or the adversary's voice in our mind that discourages us and makes us feel like, I'll never measure up, I'll never be good enough. I don't know that just because Joseph Smith was called to be a prophet, or because we have modern prophets in our current day, I don't know that they get a free pass on having to figure out how to overcome and filter out those negative voices that come to them either from the horizontal sources or from the devil. But isn't it amazing that we have this source that we can look to say, you know I'm not perfect. You know my limitations when you called me to this. And I just want to do thy work. I want to build up thy kingdom. But no, I am not perfect. Help me to know what to do in order to not be this pessimist and focus on all these really negative things. But acknowledge the fact that we're not perfect, but move forward anyway. It's a struggle for everybody.
And pointing out again the humanness of Joseph Smith, we do not have a doctrine of prophetic infallibility in the church, meaning we do not have a doctrine where we believe that our prophets are perfect. And yet too many of us think they are perfect. And so when we see them possibly making a mistake or actually just being human, or perhaps our fellow saints, we're like, wait a second, if that saint, if that prophet made a mistake, the church must not be true. I remember as a missionary out teaching and struggling with this issue where an investigator said, I really cannot listen to your message anymore because I know some of the members and here's some things that I saw them do that were wrong.
That argument, I find it so ironic The example I think we've used before in here is, Taylor, would you ever go into a second grade classroom while they're working on their math worksheets and walk up and down the rows and look at these math worksheets for these second graders and notice all the mistakes they're making, and then walk out of the room and report to me, Tyler, math is bad, math is evil, math is broken? And I'd say, what are you talking about? And you'd say, let me show you all the mistakes that were made in there that I witnessed. I saw it. They were terrible. Brothers and sisters, math isn't broken because second graders have a hard time applying mathematical principles perfectly with every single problem they run into. The gospel of Jesus Christ and the church of Jesus Christ, they're not broken or they're not bad because members of the church aren't perfect at applying those principles that are taught, that are given in every situation and in every problem we're working on at any given time, regardless of our calling. The person who bases their testimony on the truthfulness of the gospel based on how much they agree with their bishop or their stake president or their Relief Society president or their ministering sister, or all the way up the line to the prophet himself. Brothers and sisters, I don't think the scriptures tell us to have faith in people. They tell us to have faith in God the Father and His Son Jesus Christ. That's the list. And then from there, they give us the kingdom, and now we have to wrestle with mortal imperfection and fallibility and not base our testimony on how well somebody does according to the dictates of our conscience in governing the affairs of the kingdom.
And I just love this principle because there's going to be messiness in life. We bump into each other and there's friction. I mean, that's actually part of the plan so that we can learn and grow. And this makes it possible that everything that happens here that's less than ideal can actually all be overcome. And I love the invitation that's so persistent here. God saying, I will forgive, and I invite all of you to forgive. It's just a beautiful message.
So let's carry it through. Look at verse 6. There are those who have sought occasion against him without cause. So God's making this very clear. There are sometimes people who have tried to slander Joseph Smith and drag him down without cause. This is happening in 1831. Well, guess what? It's also happening in the 21st century, where people are slandering him and seeking occasion against Joseph and against other church leaders without cause. It's an amazing thing when I hear people say certain things about Joseph in a slanderous way, when I feel so spiritually immature in comparison to Joseph that I could never, ever point a finger of accusation at him without first taking a serious look in the mirror, at which point I don't want to start slandering people in the historical past when they're not here to defend themselves, when they're not here to give me context, when I've got a limited view of what they said and did and I'm judging them or condemning them based on that view.